Every time we got a new Star Wars movie during the prequel era, you could always count on some new video games to come out around the time of the launch and for the period between the movies as well. These tie-in video games gave us fans the chance to enter the Star Wars universe and live out our Jedi and pilot fantasies. Episode 3 was no different. We got plenty of games for the movie's release in May of 2005 and for some time after that. Let's get into it. The first game you might think about is the official tie-in game for PS2 and Xbox, because that game was very heavily promoted. Even a year before the movie, they were promoting it inside the original trilogy DVD box set. Or maybe the first one you think about is Battlefront 2, which came out alongside the Episode 3 DVD in the fall. But the first video game to come out that tied into the events of the movie was actually LEGO Star Wars. So let's start with that one. It was developed by Traveler's Tales, and it went above and beyond what most tie-in games usually do, because it wasn't just a tie-in game for Episode 3, it was a tie-in game for the entire trilogy. So it was a celebration of Episodes 1, 2, and 3, and it was a really good game. It was a simple and fun action platformer that let you play as dozens of LEGO characters and experience over 18 levels of Star Wars goodness. Most of the gameplay is very simple. It's you fighting enemies as either a Jedi or a blaster-wielding character. You'll have some light puzzle solving here and there, and you could use the Force to interact with the environment, but mostly it was slashing and shooting at your enemies. Sometimes gameplay could vary a little bit more than that, and you could take control of a vehicle, like in the pod racer sequence, the Republic gunship sequence, and my favorite of those 3 levels, the Battle over Coruscant, which kind of feels like something out of a Star Fox game. If you played this game before watching the movie, you basically spoiled the movie to X or Y degree, because it's all here. The movie's opening both in the Starfighters and on foot, fighting Grievous and Utapau, escaping from the Wookiee homeworld of Kashyyyk, turning off the beacon at the Jedi Temple, and of course, fighting Vader on Mustafar. I played this game over and over for many months, and I unlocked everything. I got all the minikit pieces, I got all the characters, I did everything. I played it mostly solo, but sometimes I played it with people too. I'm sure I played the entire game at least once with my brother in local co-op. This game was a lot of fun, I love it to death, and it spawned an entire series and even an entire genre of gaming, because LEGO, that's its own genre of gaming. The LEGO games are their own thing, and they are awesome at what they do. The PS2 and Xbox game was an action-heavy hack-and-slash video game, kind of like a 3D beat-em-up, but its main story mode is single-player only. No co-op for the story. So imagine a game like Mortal Kombat Shaolin Monks, or the 2000s era Ninja Turtle games, but with very limited co-op instead of for the entire story. Or if you want a Star Wars example, think Jedi Power Battles for the PS1. And it was a solid game. Repetitive? Sure, but all video games in this genre are repetitive, and that's what people like and expect. You don't see fans of the Musou games like Dynasty Warriors or Hyrule Warriors saying these games are too repetitive, or that the gameplay is too simple and not varied enough. That's the point. So if you go into that game expecting an action-heavy game with little to no gameplay variety and with a short campaign, you will have fun with it. It took you to all the places and let you play all the events that you expect from the movie. You save the Chancellor, like in the beginning of the movie, you hunt down Grievous, you betray the Jedi and storm the temple during Order 66, and then you duel in Mustafar. I imagine more often than not people play the console version, but guess what? There's a handheld version too. 2 versions actually. There was one for GBA, or Game Boy Advance, and one for the Nintendo DS. And they were a completely different game than the one on console, because these 2 were side-scrolling video games. They were 2D action beat-em-up games. So gameplay-wise they were similar, but in a very different perspective. So think of something like Streets of Rage, or Golden Axe from Sega, or the TMNT video games, for example, but with Jedis instead of vigilantes, barbarians, or humanoid turtles. The GBA version gave you the ability to play the entire game in co-op with a friend, and therefore it is the purest beat-em-up game since it has co-op unlike the other 2 versions. The DS did not have co-op, but it had slightly better visuals and the addition of some vehicle moments, like controlling the Jedi Starfighter in some levels. These levels were okay, but nothing special. It wasn't Star Fox, you know? The visuals were a bit ugly in those moments, but they weren't terrible. They didn't look as bad as something like Flight of the Falcon for the GBA. But I repeat, this wasn't Star Fox, but not horrible. I eventually got around to playing the DS version of this game instead of the GBA one, but many years after release. I think it might have been around 2018 when I played it. I do remember playing a bunch of Pokemon games around this time, things like Fire Red, Heart Gold, but I digress. Let's go back to Star Wars. It is a very fun game, very repetitive of course, just like the console version, And don't expect deep immersive level design and clever game mechanics or anything like that. It's a simple game, but it's got solid controls and fun, vibrant visuals. It's fun, and I recommend it, so go play it.
Do it.
Battlefront time. It's time for Battlefront. The second game in this series was developed by Pandemic Studios and published by LucasArts, and its release coincided with the release of the Episode 3 DVD in the fall. I remember being at my friend G's house that day with Droch, and his father had gone to the mall and brought him the Episode 3 DVD and the video game as well. And the three of us sat down together and played the multiplayer for various hours. The game was a nice evolution for the series. It had even more content from the prequels than what the previous game had. It had more planets, more infantry types, and it even had a single-player story campaign that had you playing as a 501st clone trooper. And it was narrated by Tamora Morrison, aka Jango Fett, and also Boba Fett. The biggest addition to the gameplay came in the form of the Jedis and the Siths and all the hero characters. The game would let you temporarily take control of key characters like the Emperor, Yoda, Han Solo, Luke, Leia, just to name a few, and it was fun getting to control iconic characters like this on the field. And in the case of a Jedi or a Sith like Yoda or Vader, you could just rip through the field and rip through all the enemies like they meant nothing, like they were nothing. And one of my favorite parts of these games was always the sound bites. I loved hearing lines like, "The Empire maintains order, and people like you disrupt that order."
You rebel scum.
I think that might have been the Imperial officer who said that, but I'm not sure. Don't quote me on it.
Free.
It's a shame that they canceled what was going to be the third game by Pandemic for the PS3 and the Xbox 360. I miss the old school Battlefront games, and I'm glad they remastered them, but wow, they really ruined the launch. Bad servers, a lot of glitches, but it has gotten better over time. There was a mobile game released too for phones at the time. Not much to say about that one except that it exists, or at least existed. I wonder if there's a way to play that game now, if it's been preserved somehow online. I don't know. I should look into that. And there was a plug and play game too as well. I believe it was Jakks Pacific who put it out. Yes, Jakks Pacific, the people who make the Sonic and Mario figures, they put out a Star Wars video game. A lot of companies were making plug and play games in the 2000s, you know. These were very simple games. They came inside the controller, so all you had to do was just connect the controller to the TV and play off of that controller. They kind of became the replacement in a way for the 80s and 90s Tiger Electronics games. You know, those black and white LCD screen games that we all got as gifts, but we never really wanted them as gifts. But we got them anyway. I at least was never really a fan of those things. I didn't hate them, but I didn't love them either. And in the case of the plug and play games, I only enjoyed the retro ones. The ones that came with like Atari games and television games, etc. But when new games were made for these things, they were really, really bad video games. And here we have 5 mediocre minigames. Some are side-scrolling, some are top-down, some have you swinging a lightsaber, some have you piloting Republic gunships, or Jedi interceptors, or even the Boga. But nothing life-changing here. I think 2005 and Revenge of the Sith gave us some really good video games. It was a good year for games. It was also a good year for action figures, and fast food toys, and food tie-ins, and clothing, and posters, and books, and comics, and much more. The Phantom Menace tie-ins and the hype was much bigger, sure, but Revenge of the Sith also had an awesome year in terms of tie-ins and toys and games. I did miss not getting a vehicle game this time around, like Pod Racer or Starfighter, but it was still pretty cool. Even though this video is technically about Revenge of the Sith, I do want to take a moment to talk about the other two movies, and the games that came out for The Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones. For Phantom Menace in 1999, and the years that followed that movie and before Episode 2 came out, we got a ton of video games. In 1999, we got the Time video game for PC and PS1, and also Episode 1 Racer. The pod racing game still holds up. I highly recommend the remaster for current consoles and PC, or tracking down a cartridge for the N64. The PS1 video game is janky, and it's aged a lot, but I have a soft spot for it. But my favorite Episode 1 video game is Starfighter for the PS2. It's an excellent video game with excellent controls and excellent pacing and really good graphics for the time. The controls and the gameplay are quite interesting. You have to be zooming in a lot to shoot. So it kind of reminds me of playing a first-person shooter or a third-person shooter where you have to use, one button, one of the triggers to aim, and then another one to shoot. So it's a very different video game than something like Rogue Squadron. It's a little harder, a little more complicated, but just as fun. And eventually we also got Jedi Power Battles, Obi Wan, Obi Wan's Adventures, Battle for Naboo from Factor 5, who also made Rogue Squadron, Super Bombad Racing, and much more. For Episode 2 Attack of the Clones, the main video game was Bounty Hunter for PS2, Xbox, and Gamecube. It was basically a prequel game to the prequel, because it took place before Episode 2. But if you did want a video game that took you through the events of the movie, you could play the one for the Game Boy Color. But that game was not as good as the one we got for Revenge of the Sith. Eventually we got the New Droid Army for the Game Boy, and the Clone Wars for consoles. And that one was made by Pandemic, who eventually made Battlefront and Battlefront 2. If we focus on just the year when the movie came out, and discount video games like Starfighter and Battlefront 1, then hands down Revenge of the Sith had the best year for video games when it came to the prequels. Because as good as the pod racing game was, and as much nostalgia as I have for the main Episode 1 video game, Battlefront 2 and LEGO Star Wars 1 are, in my opinion, better video games. And they count as tie-ins, because LEGO Star Wars lets you play through Episode 3 in its campaign, and Battlefront 2 has a lot of stages and characters based on Episode 3, and a story campaign inspired by the 501st, who have a big role in the Episode 3 movie. And I repeat, the main tie-in video game, both for console and handhelds, are much better games than people give them credit. They're quite good. Repetitive, but good. When I was filming most of this video, I forgot to mention Jedi Starfighter and Republic Commando. Republic Commando in particular is very important because that came out 2 months before Revenge of the Sith. It's not a tie-in game, but it's a very good game, and it came out the year of Revenge of the Sith, so to some degree it is part of the Revenge of the Sith video game experience. So yeah, a shout out to Republic Commando, and to Jedi Starfighter 2, among many other games. I mean, I didn't mention every game that came out in the 2000s, but I wanted to give those two a shout out in particular. I for one remember the Episode 3 video games, the prequel games, the year 2005, and the prequel era in general for the rest of my life. Thank you for watching, it means a lot, and if you are a fan of Revenge of the Sith, Star Wars in general, the prequels, video games, TV, movies, toys and collectibles, and much more, then this is your channel. Consider subscribing so you can stay tuned to what's coming in the future. And once again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. And of course, long live Revenge of the Sith, long live its video games, and long live the prequels.